Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to read a little bit more of Fuzzy Mud. We're going to read chapters 27 and 28. Yesterday when we left off at the end of chapter 26, Tamaya was in the forest and she was helping Chad. She gave him some juice box and she gave him some food. He was still being kind of a jerk. And Chad was saying, "No one knows, no one cares." So chapter 27 begins on Wednesday, November 3rd at 2:41 p.m. Marshall banged a stick against one tree and then another as he wandered aimlessly through the woods. He broke the stick in half and he flung the halves in opposite directions. He didn't know why he did that. He didn't know why he did anything anymore. He didn't know why he hadn't told Mrs. Thaxton the truth. He didn't know why he had snuck out of school. He didn't even know why he had returned to the woods. It certainly wasn't to look for Tamaya. If she wanted to go searching for Chad, that was her problem. Mostly, he had just needed to get away from Mrs. Thaxton, away from his teachers, away from everybody. If he could have gotten away from himself, he would have done that too. Nothing made sense anymore. Tamaya should have been glad that Chad wasn't in school, and Mrs. Thaxton acted like Chad was some kind of a star pupil. Did anyone see Chad yesterday? Did you talk to him? What did he say? Where was he going? He was going to beat me up, Marshall thought, kicking leaves. That's where he was going. What was he supposed to do? Meet Chad on Richmond Road so he could just get the snot beat out of him? Would that have made everybody happy? He kicked a rock, and then he walked quickly after it. He picked it up and he threw it as far as he could. "Chad's been picking on Marshall all year," Andy had said, for no reason. They all knew, Andy, Laura, Cody, everybody. So why didn't anyone do anything? Why hadn't they stuck up for him? Why had they let Chad make his life so miserable day after day after day? But that wasn't the real question, and he knew it. The real question was this: why hadn't he stuck up for himself? And he knew the answer to that too, because he was a coward, like Chad had said, a thumb-sucking coward. If Laura thought that Chad was mean, then what did she think of Marshall? Nothing. He was just a bug that Chad had stepped on. He thought about the way that Tamaya used to look up to him, like he was her hero, some hero. When it came down to it, she was the one who had protected him. She had smashed the mud into Chad's face, and now she was out there searching for Chad because he had been too scared to tell Mrs. Thaxton the truth. He wondered if Tamaya could possibly be right about the mud. It didn't seem possible. Somebody would have just put up a warning sign or something. She'd probably just touched some weird kind of poison ivy. He stopped. Just ahead, some kind of an animal was crouched atop a dead tree trunk, ready to pounce. Keeping his eye on it, he slowly bent down and picked up a rock. The sun, shining through the treetops, caused a crisscross of shadows and light over the creature, making it difficult to tell exactly what it was. Possibly a raccoon, or maybe a badger, he thought, although he wasn't sure he knew exactly what a badger looked like. It appeared to be snarling. Whatever it was, since it was out during the day, it might be rabid. He rolled the rock over in his hand. "Hey!" he shouted at it. It didn't move. He threw the rock towards it, hoping to scare it away. The rock bounced off the tree trunk, and the animal still didn't move. Marshall picked up another rock and took a few steps closer. "Go away!" he shouted, and then he took a few more steps. Maybe it wasn't snarling? He boldly took another step. Maybe it wasn't alive. He moved closer. Maybe it wasn't even an animal at all, but just somebody's mud-soaked sweater. He almost laughed. "Now I'm even afraid of sweaters." Beneath the mud, he could see the maroon color and the partially obscured words, "virtue and valor." He realized whose sweater it was. On the other side of the tree trunk was a large puddle of dark mud covered in fuzzy scum. He saw the mud-covered sneaker and a rolled-up white sock also spattered with the mud. The sock did it. Something wrenched inside of him. All of his feelings of shame and self-pity and self-hatred vanished. He was no longer thinking about himself at all. "Ooh, this is really bad," he said aloud. Okay, we're going to read chapter 28, Wednesday, November 3rd at 2:55 p.m. Tamaya held one end of a long stick, and Chad trailed behind, holding the other. "I'm ducking under a branch," she announced, and then she crouched down lower than necessary for her, but she had to watch out for him too. The stick was about 6 feet long, thicker at Chad's end with a slight bend in the middle. Tamaya had broken a bunch of twigs off of it, but a few of the nubs still remained. She held the cloth sack between her hand and the stick to try to keep it from rubbing against her blisters. Somehow she would have to get him across the gully. She thought about trying to go around it, but then she might never find her way back to school. Her best chance was just to try to retrace her steps exactly. "I just am," Chad said. "I don't know why. I just don't know. I am." She had no idea what he was talking about. You are what?" "You asked me why I was so mean." "I'm just saying, it's not like I don't know it." Tamaya had never expected him to actually answer that question. "Well, if you know you're mean," she said, "then why don't you just stop being that way?" "I don't know. You're not being mean to me right now." I could just pull the stick from you and hit you with it, even if I couldn't see you. And then you'd probably scream, and then I'd be able to tell where you were. And the more you screamed, the more I would hit you." "I wouldn't scream. I would sneak away." "I'd still probably hit you with it a few times anyway." "Probably," Tamaya agreed. It was an odd conversation, she realized, but he didn't sound angry and she didn't feel scared, but then you'd be left out here all alone and lost again. "I know, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the kind of dumb stuff I do." Tamaya thought about what he had said earlier about thinking that nobody had even noticed when he hadn't come home. "You have any brothers or sisters?" she asked. "2 sisters and a brother." "So they would have noticed when you didn't come home." "They're perfect," he said, not answering her question. "Good grades, never get in trouble. I'm the only bad one." Tamaya wanted to tell him that that wasn't true, but it was hard to think of something good to say about him. "No one is all bad," she said at last. "The kids at school like you." That's just because I'm different. I'm not smart like the rest of you. Half the time I don't even get what people are saying. It's like everyone's talking a foreign language. The only reason I even go to your school is to keep me from going to jail, and it's costing my parents a lot of money, and that's all they care about, how much money I'm costing them." Tamaya wondered if he really would go to jail, or if that was just another one of his exaggerated stories, like the crazy hermit and his pet wolves. "Sometimes I don't get home until real late," he said. "No one even notices, or if they do, they don't care." "Well, where do you go?" she asked. "Here in the woods. I climb up as high as I can climb, and then I just look down at the world. I bring some wood and I hammer it into trees to make steps. I climb a little ways up, and then I nail a couple of boards to the tree, and then I climb up on them, and I nail more boards. I always want to get higher." Talking about his tree climbing seemed to give Chad more energy. That was encouraging. He would need all of his strength to make it across the gully. "I saw your tree," she realized. "It's one of my markers for getting back to school. Follow the white branch and then turn at the tree with the wood nailed to it." "That's how I saw you and Marshall," Chad said, "from up there." He said it was something to be proud of, or he said it like it was something to be proud of, in spite of all that had happened. Tamaya wondered if he had also seen the crazy hermit from up in his tree. Maybe that was how he had gotten the hole in his pant leg, too. Not from a wolf bite, like he had said, but from climbing trees. Thinking about all of this, she had momentarily stopped paying close attention and suddenly looked down to see a puddle of fuzzy mud directly in front of her. "Stop!" she exclaimed. Chad took another step. The stick pushed her forward. She had to hop sideways to avoid the mud, and she fell into a tangle of bushes. "Wait, what happened? Are you all right? What happened?" Twigs scraped her face and her arms. "Don't move," she warned. "The mud is right in front of you. Just don't move." Her hair was caught, and she carefully untangled it as she extricated herself from the bush, still holding onto her end of the stick. "Okay," she told Chad, "you're going to have to try to go around this side of the mud, but there's not a lot of room." She led him between the bush and the mud, watching every step he took as twigs scraped her legs. "Stay as close to the bush as you can. You have to walk sideways." He made it safely around the mud, and they continued on down the gully. Fresh scratches covered her arms and her legs, but Chad was a lot worse, so there was no point in complaining. Next time I say stop, you have to stop. Sorry. You almost pushed me into the mud. Sorry, he said again. The ground became steeper. Tamaya warned Chad about the gully down below. She knew that he was big and strong enough to make the jump. The tricky part would be getting him to a good jumping off place and then making sure he jumped in the right direction. I can do it, he assured her. As the ground became very steep, she had to turn around and walk backward. It was like going down a ladder. She gripped the sticks tightly with both hands. Whatever you do, don't let go of the stick, she said. I won't. She directed every step he took. There's a rock just a little ways down in front of you. Careful, careful. She watched his foot settle into place as she inched her way backward. Okay, don't move. She twisted her neck around. The gully seemed wider than she remembered, the mud deeper, and just below her there was a rock jutting out from the dirt above the gully. That seemed like the best place for him to jump from. I will go first and then you, she told him. Okay, I'm going to drop the stick now. Okay, she counted in her head. 1, 2, on 3, she dropped the stick, although she still held her lunch sack. Her feet slid beneath her, but she kept her balance and she spun around and stepped down hard onto the rock. The rock gave way instantly. Tamaya tumbled. Her knees banged hard against the side of the slope. She shut her eyes just in time as she somersaulted into the mud. Her feet hit the bottom of the gully, and she forced her head up to the surface. Her eyes remained closed. She could feel the warm muck clinging to her face and over her eyelids. She tried to move, but it was impossible. Did you make it? Chad called. No, she screamed. I'm stuck. She could feel grittiness on her teeth and her gums. It tasted like nail polish remover. She tried to spit it out. Help me, she called, and then she spit again. I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? Get me out of here. For a moment, Chad didn't respond, and then she heard him closer than before. Try to grab the stick, he shouted. She stretched out her arms, but there was nothing to grab onto. Where is it? And then it cracked against the side of her head. 2 times 16,777,216 equals 33,554,432. 2 times 33,554,432 equals, can you see those numbers? 67,108,864. Remember, these are in reference to the ergies and their exponential growth. We'll pick up tomorrow with chapter 29. Have a good night.